a little girl points to an abandoned car in the cold. The young billionaire looks inside and is shocked by what he sees. 10 o'clock at night. The streets of Seattle were deserted under a biting cold that turned breath into vapor. Damien Leclerc walked unhurriedly, his hands buried in the pockets of his expensive coat, his footsteps echoing on the frozen asphalt. He had no destination. He just walked. It was like this every night. After work, instead of going straight home, he would go out. He would walk the streets until exhaustion overcame the restlessness that gnawed at him from within. 33 years of life, billions in the bank, and he couldn't find peace. The icy wind cut at the exposed skin on his face. Damien pulled the collar of his coat up higher and continued on. He passed by closed shops, traffic lights blinking for the few cars, establishments with their lights already out. That's when he saw her. A child. There, standing on the corner, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. Damien stopped walking. He blinked a few times, thinking he was imagining things. But no, it was real. A small girl, she couldn't have been more than 5 years old, was there on the sidewalk, alone, in the middle of the freezing night. She was wearing pink pajamas with unicorn designs and a thin little jacket that clearly wasn't enough for the brutal cold. Her feet were bare. Her dark hair was stuck to her face by the icy dampness. She was shivering violently. Damien looked around. There was no one. No adult running after her. No movement in the nearby windows. Just the two of them on the almost empty street, with only a few cars passing by from time to time. He approached slowly, like someone approaching a frightened animal. "Hi," he said softly. "Are you okay?" The girl didn't answer. She didn't even look at him. She remained motionless, her thin arms stretched out in front of her, her index finger pointing at something. Her lips were already turning purple from the cold. Damien followed the direction of her finger. A car. A dark blue Honda Civic, parked a few yards away. It looked ordinary. Normal. Nothing special. "What's over there?" he asked, crouching down to be at the child's eye level. She finally looked at him. Her brown eyes were wide, shining with tears that hadn't yet fallen. Her lower lip was trembling, but not just from the cold. "Mommy," she whispered, the word coming out like a little cloud of vapor. The word hit Damien like a punch to the gut. He looked at the car again. The windows were fogged up from the cold. It was impossible to see inside. He stood up and walked to the vehicle, his shoes making noise on the frozen asphalt. The girl followed him, her bare feet almost sticking to the cold ground. Damien wiped the vapor from the driver's side window with his coat sleeve. "It can't be." The words left his mouth before he could think. A woman was inside, leaning back in the seat, motionless, a brunette, looking to be in her early 20s, pregnant, very pregnant. Her huge belly pressed against the steering wheel, and she was completely unconscious. Damien's heart raced. He tried to open the door. Locked. He ran to the other side of the car, slipping a little on the icy asphalt, also locked. He went back to the driver's window and banged on the glass. "Ma'am!" he shouted. "Wake up!" Nothing. The woman didn't move. Her breath created small clouds on the car's cold window. The girl remained on the sidewalk watching. Tears were now streaming down her small face, but she made no sound, as if she had already learned that crying didn't solve anything. Damien looked around, searching for something. He saw a large rock near the curb. He didn't think twice. He picked it up and broke the passenger side window. The sound of shattering glass echoed in the silent street, breaking the silence of the cold night. Damien reached his arm through the hole, feeling the cold air enter the car, unlocked the door, and opened it. The smell hit him immediately. Blood. And something else. Something that made his stomach turn. The woman was breathing, but she was unconscious. Her face was pale, sweaty despite the cold, and there was a pool of liquid on the seat. "Shit," Damien muttered, his breath forming vapor in the cold air. He had never been near a pregnant woman in labor, but he didn't need to be a doctor to understand what was happening. He took out his phone with fingers already numb from the cold and dialed 911. "Hello? I need an ambulance urgently," he said quickly, giving the address. A pregnant woman, unconscious. I think she's going into labor." As he spoke, he kept his eyes on the woman. Her breathing was irregular, her chest rising and falling in a strange rhythm. "How many minutes?" he asked the operator. 15. "No, I can't wait 15 minutes in the cold." He hung up and looked at the girl, who was still standing on the sidewalk like a small, fragile statue, shivering from the cold. "What's your name?" he asked. "Ivy," she answered, her voice barely audible, her teeth chattering. "Ivy, listen, I'm going to take your mom to the hospital now, okay? Come here." Ivy didn't move, her feet probably numb from the cold. Damien took a deep breath. He didn't have time to gently persuade her. The woman in the car needed immediate help, and that child was going to freeze out here. He slipped his arms under the woman's body and lifted her carefully. She was heavier than he expected, not just from the weight of the pregnancy, but because she was completely limp, unconscious. "Ivy," he called more firmly, "I need you to come with me now. It's too cold out here." This time she obeyed. She walked towards them with small, uncertain steps, clearly struggling with her cold feet. Damien placed the woman in the back seat of his own car, a black BMW that was parked 2 blocks away. The warm interior of the vehicle was an immediate relief. Ivy climbed in without complaining and sat next to her mother, holding her hand with her own small, cold hands. "Is she going to be okay?" she asked, finally stopping her shivering thanks to the car's heater. Damien looked in the rear-view mirror. The child seemed even smaller there on the leather seat, lost in the large space of the luxury car. Her brown eyes were fixed on her mother's pale face. "Yes, she is," he lied. "Everything's going to be all right." He stepped on the gas. The nearest hospital was 15 minutes away, but Damien made the trip in 8. He ran red lights, drove through streets he didn't know, guided only by the GPS and his desperation. With every minute that passed, the woman's breathing grew weaker. Ivy whispered things he couldn't hear, as if she were praying or singing a lullaby. When they arrived at the emergency room, Damien didn't even park properly. He stopped the car in front of the entrance and started shouting for help. In seconds, nurses appeared with a stretcher. "She's in labor," he yelled. "She's unconscious." Everything became a rush. The woman was taken away on a stretcher, disappearing through double doors that closed with a definitive sound. Ivy stood in the middle of the warm hallway, finally no longer shivering. Damien looked at her, the girl who had saved her own mother's life just by pointing at a car. 5 years old, barefoot in the cold of the night, and she had been braver than most adults he knew. "Come here," he said, holding out his hand. Ivy hesitated for a moment, then placed her small, still-cold hand in his. They went to the front desk. Damien tried to give what little information he had. The mother's name, he didn't know. Address, he didn't have. Health insurance, he had no idea. "I'll pay," he told the receptionist. "Anything she needs." The woman behind the counter looked at him, then at Ivy with her bare feet, then back at him. It must have been a strange sight. A man in an expensive suit holding the hand of a child in pajamas in the middle of the night. "Are you relatives?" she asked. Damien opened his mouth to answer but didn't know what to say. Technically, he was a complete stranger. He didn't even know their full names. "We're friends," he finally answered. An hour later, a doctor appeared, young, looking tired but smiling. "The girl's mother is fine," he said, "and the baby too. A beautiful, healthy boy." Ivy squeezed Damien's hand. "Can I see them?" she asked. "Of course. Your mother is awake now, asking for you." They walked down the hall to a small room. The woman was in bed, pale but awake, with a tiny baby in her arms. When she saw Ivy, her eyes filled with tears. "My brave girl," she whispered, "you saved us." Ivy ran to the bed and climbed up carefully, cuddling next to her mother and little brother. Damien stood at the door, watching the scene. A family reunited, safe, alive, warm. The woman looked at him over Ivy's head. "Thank you," she said simply. He nodded. Outside, the cold night continued. But inside, there was warmth, there was life, there was hope. And for the first time in a long time, Damien Leclerc felt that maybe he could find the peace he had been searching for. The next morning, Damien woke up earlier than usual. He couldn't sleep well, thinking about the woman and her children. What would they do when they left the hospital? Where would they go? The image of the little girl pointing at the car in the cold night wouldn't leave his mind. He took a quick shower, put on a grey suit, and drove to the hospital. It was only 7 in the morning, but he couldn't stay still at home. He found them in the room. The woman was sitting up in bed, nursing the baby. Ivy was playing with some colored pencils a nurse had given her, drawing flowers on a piece of paper. "Good morning," Damien said from the doorway. The woman looked up at him. It was the first time they had seen each other properly, in natural light and without the desperation of the emergency. She had wavy brown hair that fell to her shoulders, and tired but still beautiful green eyes. Her face had delicate features, despite her paleness. She must have been around 26. "Hi," she replied, her voice low and a bit hoarse. "I'm sorry. I couldn't even thank you properly yesterday. I was a little confused with everything. You don't need to apologize for anything. How are you feeling?" "Good, all things considered. The doctor said we can go home this afternoon if the tests continue to be normal." Damien was silent for a moment. He knew he should ask, but he didn't want to seem intrusive. "Do you have somewhere to go?" he finally asked. The question hung in the air like a weight. The woman looked away, focusing on the baby nursing peacefully. "We always find a way," she finally said, but her voice betrayed her uncertainty. "What's your name?" Damien asked, pulling a chair to sit near the bed. Lena Wyatt. "And this little one is—" She looked at the newborn baby, with his fine dark hair and red face. "I haven't chosen a name yet. Everything happened so fast." "Ivy told me you're very brave." Lena laughed, but without humor. A bitter laugh. "Brave? I don't know if that's the right word. I was sleeping in the car because I had nowhere else to stay. The landlord evicted me the day before yesterday morning. Ivy and I were trying to sleep in the back seat when the contractions started suddenly." Damien felt a tightness in his chest. He imagined the scene. Ivy seeing her mother in pain, getting out of the car in the brutal cold of the night to find help. Her 5-year-old child, barefoot, shivering, but determined to save her family. "The children's father," he began, but stopped when he saw the expression on Lena's face. "He's not in our lives," she said categorically, "and it's better that way." Damien understood he shouldn't press the issue. "Listen," he said, moving his chair closer to the bed. "I have a big house. Very big. It has several empty rooms that I never use. You can stay there until you get organized. Find a place of your own." Lena stared at him, her green eyes full of suspicion. "Why? You don't know me from anywhere." "It's true, I don't. But I saw how you raise your daughter. I saw how much she loves you, how brave she was to protect you. And," he paused, searching for the right words, "let's just say that yesterday you reminded me that there are still good things in the world. I can't accept charity. I have no way to pay for anything. I'm not offering charity. I'm offering a safe and warm place for you to stay until you can get back on your feet." Lena looked at Ivy, who had stopped drawing and was watching the conversation attentively. "He's nice, Mommy," Ivy said, with the typical sincerity of children. "He helped me when you were sick, and he didn't yell at me." The last sentence caught Damien's attention. He didn't yell at her. What kind of life had these two led? "Only until I can get a job and save money for rent," Lena said finally. "And I'll pay back every cent you spend." "As you wish. And I want to know your full name, where you work, everything. I'm not going to live in a complete stranger's house." Damien Leclerc. "I own the Leclerc Urban Group." Lena blinked, surprised. She clearly recognized the name. "The construction company, the commercial buildings, among other things." "Yes." She became even more suspicious. "Why does a billionaire want to help a complete homeless stranger?" "Because your daughter taught me something last night. She showed me that sometimes the right thing to do is to just do it, without thinking twice." Lena looked at Ivy again, then at the baby in her arms. "Okay," she said, "but only until I get myself organized." Before picking them up from the hospital that afternoon, Damien made an important stop. He drove to a shopping mall and went straight to a large children's store. He had never set foot in such a place and was lost among the colorful shelves. A saleswoman approached, a friendly lady in her 50s. "Can I help you? I need clothes for a 5-year-old girl and a newborn baby, and other basic things. Are they your children?" "They're friends," he replied, not quite sure how to explain the situation. The saleswoman guided him through the sections. They chose several items for Ivy: pants, shirts, coats, pajamas, underwear, socks, shoes. For the baby, onesies, bodysuits, cloth and disposable diapers, bottles, pacifiers. "You'll need some things for the mother too," the saleswoman suggested. "Postpartum clothes, nursing bras." Damien blushed a little but agreed. The woman helped him choose basic and comfortable items. "And toys?" she asked. They went to the toy section. Damien chose colored pencils, drawing pads, some children's books, simple puzzles, a small doll, things every child should have. "They're so lucky," the saleswoman commented as she bagged everything. Damien didn't reply. He didn't feel generous. He felt needed, as if he were finally doing something that mattered. In the afternoon, he returned to the hospital with the car loaded with bags. Ivy was excited to see him. "You came back," she said, running to hug his legs. "Of course I came back. And I brought some things for you." Lena looked at the bags with suspicion. "What is all this?" "Clothes. Some basic things. I thought you might need them." Ivy opened one of the bags and her eyes widened. "Is this all for me?" she asked, picking up a pink shirt with a cat design. "For both of you," said Damien, "and for your little brother, too." Lena looked inside the bags and her eyes filled with tears. "You didn't have to. This must have cost a fortune. You can't leave the hospital with just the clothes on your backs." In the car, on the way to the house, Ivy fiddled with the new clothes in the back seat, impressed with each piece. She held a small, brown-haired doll, as if it were the greatest treasure in the world. "Can I give her a name?" she asked. "Of course," Damien replied. "She's yours. I'll call her Luna." Lena smiled, watching her daughter. The baby slept peacefully in the car seat that Damien had also bought. Damien's house was in an affluent area of Seattle, surrounded by well-manicured gardens. It was a modern building with large glass windows and clean lines. Ivy got out of the car and looked up, trying to see where the house ended. "It's bigger than the building where we used to live," she commented, impressed. "Much bigger," Lena murmured, carrying the baby in her arms and observing everything with cautious eyes. "Come on," said Damien, carrying some bags. "I'll show you the house." The interior was even more impressive. Expensive furniture, modern art on the walls, a giant crystal chandelier in the entrance hall. Everything impeccably clean, organized, and completely devoid of personal life. "Wow," Ivy whispered, spinning around to see everything. "It's very beautiful," Lena said, polite but clearly intimidated. Damien showed them the main rooms. The modern kitchen with every possible appliance, the living room with white leather sofas and a huge TV. The office with shelves full of books that looked like they had never been opened. "Here," he said, stopping in front of a door on the second floor. "This room can be yours." He opened the door. It was a spacious room, with a king-size bed, a large closet, and a wide window overlooking the garden. "It's beautiful," Lena said, but then frowned. "But there's no crib for the baby." "Oh, right. Hold on," said Damien. He left and came back a few minutes later, dragging an old wooden dresser that was in another room. "What are you doing?" Lena asked, curious. "Improvising a temporary crib." He removed all the drawers from the dresser, creating an empty space. Then he lined the inside with soft pillows and blankets he took from the closet. "There," he said, satisfied. "A safe and comfortable crib." Lena laughed. It was the first time Damien had seen her truly laugh. "Do you have kids?" she asked. "No." "Why?" "Because only someone with kids would think of such a creative solution." Damien smiled, embarrassed. "Ivy, want to see where you'll sleep?" he asked. "I'm going to have my own room." The girl's eyes widened. "Of course, everyone needs their own space." He took her to the room next door. It was smaller than Lena's, but still spacious. It had a single bed with a light blue comforter, a small desk near the window, and an empty bookshelf. "Is it really mine?" Ivy asked, touching the bed as if it were something magical. "While you're here, yes." Ivy climbed onto the bed and threw herself on her back, looking up at the white ceiling. She spread her arms as if she wanted to hug the whole space. "I've never had my own room before," she said, her voice full of awe. Damien felt that tightness in his chest again. He looked at Lena, who was standing in the doorway with the baby in her arms, watching her daughter's happiness. "Ivy," he said, approaching the bed, "can I tell you something important?" She sat up on the bed, paying attention. "You were braver than many adults last night. You saved your mum and your little brother. You should be very proud of that." Ivy smiled, embarrassed by the compliment. "Mommy always said that if something bad happened, I had to ask big people for help. And you did exactly that. You were very smart and brave." Lena approached and kissed the top of her daughter's head. "My little hero," she murmured. That night, Damien had dinner with company for the first time in years. Lena cooked with what she found in the fridge: eggs, some slightly wilted vegetables, a little cheese. It wasn't much, but she worked miracles, creating a tasty omelette and a simple salad. "Sorry there isn't much," Damien said, embarrassed. "I usually order takeout." "It's perfect," said Lena. "I can go to the grocery store tomorrow if you don't mind. Of course, there's a house account card. You can use it as you wish." Ivy ate in silence for a while, still processing all the changes. Every now and then she would look around the table as if she couldn't believe she was there. "Mommy's food is the best in the whole world," she said to Damien. "I completely agree," he replied, and it was true. It had been years since he had eaten a home-cooked meal. After dinner, Lena gave Ivy a bath in the huge bathtub in the room, dressed her in new pajamas and put her to sleep. The baby was also quiet, sleeping soundly in the makeshift crib. Damien was in the office, trying to concentrate on some contracts, when he heard it. A scream, loud, desperate, cutting through the silence of the house. He dropped the papers and ran into the hallway. He saw a light on in Ivy's room. He stopped at the door, hesitating, not sure if he should go in. Ivy was sitting up in bed, crying loudly. Lena was already there, sitting on the edge of the bed, pulling her daughter into a protective hug. "It was just a nightmare, my love," Lena said, her voice calm. "Mommy's here. You're safe." "I dreamed that you wouldn't wake up in the car," Ivy sobbed, "and I couldn't help you." "But you did help, remember? You were very smart. You went to get help and I got better." The baby started crying in the next room, awakened by the noise. Lena sighed. "Stay here with me for a little bit," she said to Ivy. "I'll go get your little brother and we'll all be together." She brought the baby and sat on Ivy's bed again with him in her lap. She began to rock them both, quietly singing a lullaby that Damien didn't know, but that had a sweet melody. Damien stood there, leaning against the hallway wall, watching unseen. Lena with the baby in her arms, Ivy nestled by her side, her soft voice filling the previously silent room. It was the first time his house had this kind of sound, not the cold and empty silence of always, but the warm noise of life, of a family taking care of each other with love. He stayed there until he was sure everyone had gone back to sleep. Then he went to his own room, but he couldn't rest for long. The next morning he woke up early as usual. He had coffee alone in the silent kitchen and got ready to leave for work. But on the way he stopped at a children's store. He bought a very soft blanket, yellow with small embroidered stars, and a small and brown teddy bear with a blue bow tie. When he returned from work that night, the three of them were already asleep. The house was quiet, but it was a different kind of quiet, a full silence, not an empty one. He went up to Ivy's room slowly, being careful not to make any noise. He discreetly left the extra blanket and the teddy bear on the chair near the bed. He went down to the kitchen and stopped at the door, surprised. It was completely different, more organized, more alive. There were simple flowers in a vase in the center of the table, white daisies that Lena must have picked from the garden. The soft smell of food still lingered in the air. For the first time since he bought that huge house, it really felt like a home. On the third day in the house, Ivy began to truly explore. She had woken up earlier than her mother and little brother, and she tiptoed out of her room, curious to get to know the giant place she now called home. Damien was in the kitchen having coffee when he saw her appear at the door, still in her pink unicorn pajamas, her dark hair messy from sleep. She stood there for a moment, as if asking for permission to enter. "Good morning," he said, smiling. Did you sleep well? Hi, Ivy replied shyly. Mommy's still sleeping. The baby woke up several times during the night. Want to have breakfast with me? Damien offered. Ivy nodded and approached the table. Damien poured her a glass of milk and put some toast on her plate. Can I see the house? She asked, biting into a piece of toast. Of course, it's your house now too. After breakfast, Ivy began her exploration. Damien watched her from a distance, pretending to read the newspaper, but actually paying attention to her every move. She walked through the living room, touching the soft sofas, admiring the paintings on the walls without quite understanding what they meant. She stopped in front of the bookshelf, running her small fingers over the colorful spines. In the office, she was fascinated by the large, dark wood desk. What do you do here? She asked, pointing to the scattered papers. I work. I read contracts, sign documents, Damien explained. Ivy picked up a blank sheet of paper that was on the desk. Can I draw on it? Of course. She picked up a pen and started to scribble. It was nothing elaborate, just childish strokes, but there was an intense concentration on her little face. Her tongue peeked out from the corner of her mouth as she tried to make the lines come out the way she wanted. Damien watched her for a few minutes. There was something special in the way she held the pen, in the way her eyes sparkled when she managed to create a drawing that satisfied her. Do you like to draw? He asked. A lot, Ivy replied without taking her eyes off the paper. Mommy always said I was good at it, but we never had many pencils at home. The sentence stuck in Damien's head for the rest of the day. After he left for work, he couldn't concentrate properly in his meetings. He thought of the little girl who loved to draw, but never had enough materials to express her creativity. Ivy continued her exploration of the house throughout the day. She went up and down the stairs several times, admiring how her steps echoed on the marble. She discovered the TV room with its huge screen and complicated remote controls. She found a closet full of expensive clothes that were never worn. Why do you have so many clothes? She asked Damien when he got home from work. Good question, he replied, laughing. I guess I've never thought about it. In the late afternoon, on his way home, Damien stopped at an art supply store. He walked through the colorful aisles, looking at the options. He bought a sketchbook with thick, good quality paper, a large box of colored pencils with 24 different colors, crayons, and fine-tipped markers. He also picked up a pretty pencil case, pink with gold details, to keep everything organized. When he got home, Lena was in the kitchen preparing dinner. The smell of home-cooked food filled his nostrils as soon as he walked through the door. It was an aroma he had never smelled at home before, the smell of a meal made with love. How was your day? She asked, without turning from the stove where she was stirring something in a pot. Good. And you, how did you settle in today? Well, Ivy spent the day exploring every corner. I think she knows the house better than you do now. Damien laughed. It was very likely. He placed the bag from the art supply store on the kitchen counter, but said nothing about its contents. She asked about everything. Why there are so many empty rooms, why the TV is so big, why you don't use the pool, Lena said, smiling. And what did you answer? That some people like to have space. The next day, before going to work, Damien left the sketchbook and colored pencils on the living room table, in a place where Ivy would surely see them when she came down for breakfast. He left no note, no explanation, just the materials waiting to be discovered. When he came home that night, he found Ivy exactly where he expected, sitting on the living room floor, completely absorbed in her drawings. The sketchbook was open beside her, and several sheets scattered on the soft rug showed her day's work. She said nothing when she saw him arrive. She just looked at him for a second, smiled shyly, and went back to concentrating on the drawing she was currently making. Damien approached slowly and sat on the sofa, watching. Ivy was drawing a house. Not the house they were in now, but a small, simple house with 2 square windows, a blue door, and a chimney with grey smoke spiraling out. Next to the house were 3 figures, a tall woman with long hair, a little girl, and what looked like a baby in the woman's arms. It's my family, Ivy said, without him asking. It's very beautiful. I like the colors you chose. Do you want me to draw you too? Damien felt something move in his chest. An emotion he didn't quite know how to name, but it was warm and comfortable. "If you'd like to do that." Ivy took a new sheet of paper and began to draw. Damien sat there, quiet, watching her work. There was a seriousness in the way she chose the colors, how she decided where to place each line. She was an artist in miniature, focused on her work. From the sofa next to him, Lena was discreetly breastfeeding the baby. She had a thin blanket over her shoulder, covering the child, and she rocked him gently to keep him calm and focused on feeding. Her movements were natural, automatic, as if she had done it thousands of times. Damien looked at her and felt something different from what he had felt in the first few days. Initially, he saw Lena as someone who needed help, a woman in a difficult situation whom he could rescue. But now, watching her there, he saw something completely different. He saw how she organized the house without anyone asking, how she woke up early to prepare breakfast for everyone, even though she was tired. How she cared for Ivy with infinite patience, even when the girl threw a tantrum. How she rocked the baby in the middle of the night without complaining, without sighing from exhaustion. She didn't complain about anything. She asked for nothing beyond what was necessary for the children. She just did what needed to be done, with a quiet dignity that impressed him more each day. "Pedassen," Ivy announced, showing him the drawing. It was a stick figure, but clearly male, with dark hair and what looked like a suit. Next to him were the 3 figures of the family she had drawn before. "Now there are 4 of us," Ivy said, satisfied with her work. Damien took the drawing and looked at it for a long time. It was simple, childish, but there was something powerful in that image. The feeling of belonging to something, of being part of a group. "Can I keep it?" he asked. "Of course. I made it for you." That night, after Ivy had gone to sleep, and Lena had retired to her room with the baby, Damien stayed in the living room looking at the drawings scattered on the floor. There were dozens of them. Houses, flowers, strange animals, smiling people, the world seen through the eyes of a 5-year-old child. He gathered them all carefully and placed them in a clean folder. He didn't want them to get lost or damaged. They were little treasures. In the following days, a quiet and comfortable routine was established. Damien would leave for work in the morning, return in the late afternoon, and find Ivy in the same spot in the living room, drawing. She didn't talk much during these sessions, but she always showed him her drawings, and he always looked with genuine attention, made comments, asked about the colors she chose or the stories behind the drawings. It was a strange connection, built without many words, just through a child's drawings and the genuine attention of a man who had never spent time with children before, but was discovering how rewarding it could be. During the day, when he was in the office working, Damien began to observe more closely how Lena managed the household routine. She always woke up before everyone else, even though she had slept little because of the baby waking up to feed during the night. She prepared breakfast, checked if Ivy had brushed her teeth, changed the baby's diapers, and organized the rooms, all this without hurry, without irritation. Even when Ivy threw a tantrum about taking a bath, or when the baby cried non-stop for hours, Lena remained calm. She spoke softly, with affection, and solved problems one at a time without losing her patience. One morning, Damien came down for coffee and found Lena in the kitchen, with the baby in her arms, trying to make scrambled eggs with one hand. Ivy was sitting at the table, still sleepy, playing with the cereal in her bowl instead of eating it. "Want me to hold him?" Damien offered, gesturing towards the baby. Lena hesitated for a moment, then smiled. "Thank you. He's having a tough day today. He doesn't want to leave my arms." Damien took the baby carefully. It was the first time he had held such a small child, and he was nervous for a second. The baby was light, warm, and smelled of powder and milk. He opened his dark little eyes and looked directly at Damien, as if studying his face. "He likes you," Lena commented, stirring the eggs in the pan. "How do you know?" "He usually cries when strangers hold him." "With you, he's quiet." Damien looked at the baby, who continued to watch him with curiosity. He felt a wave of protectiveness he had never experienced before, a primitive instinct to care for and protect. "Have you chosen a name for him yet?" "Ethan," Lena said. I've always liked that name. Ethan, Damien repeated, looking at the baby. It suits him. At that moment, Ivy looked at them and smiled with a mouthful of cereal. Looks like Ethan has two daddies now, she said, with the typical innocence of children. Lena blushed and focused on the eggs. Damien felt his face heat up too, but he said nothing. He just continued to rock the baby gently. During lunch, Damien watched how Lena cut Ivy's food into small, safe pieces, how she wiped the girl's mouth without her noticing, how she rocked Ethan when he started to get fussy. They were small, automatic gestures, but they showed constant and attentive care. Lena wasn't just a mother, she was a good mother. A dedicated mother who always put her children's needs before her own, who found joy in their small achievements, who had infinite patience for their needs. In the afternoon, while trying to focus on contracts in his office, Damien heard laughter coming from the living room. He went out to see what was happening and found Lena on the floor, playing with Ivy. They were putting together a puzzle, and Lena celebrated every piece Ivy managed to fit as if it were a great achievement. "Well done," she would say, clapping her hands. "You're so smart. Look how perfectly it fits." Ivy beamed with her mother's praise. Ethan was lying on a soft blanket next to them, waving his little arms and watching everything with curiosity. It was a simple or everyday scene, but there was a beauty in it that touched something deep within Damien. It was the beauty of real life, of a real family, of real and unconditional love. That night, after dinner, Ivy showed Damien her drawings from the day. She had made several: an orange cat with stripes, a large tree with red apples, and a drawing of all of them together at the dinner table. "This one is my favorite," she said, pointing to the last one. In the drawing, 4 figures were sitting around a table. Damien recognized himself, Lena, Ivy, and a smaller figure that must have been Ethan in Lena's lap. Everyone was smiling. "Why is it your favorite?" he asked. "Because it looks like a real family," Ivy replied simply. Damien looked at Lena, who was organizing Ivy's toys in a box. She had heard her daughter's comment, and her eyes met his for a moment before she looked away, clearly embarrassed. That night, alone in his room, Damien thought about Ivy's words. A real family. That's what they had brought to his house. Not just people living in the same space, but a real sense of belonging, of mutual care, of unconditional love. And Lena was no longer just a woman he was helping out of charity or moral obligation. She was a strong, dedicated, caring woman. A woman who turned any place into a home just with her presence and care. For the first time in his adult life, Damien began to understand what it meant to admire someone, not out of pity or a sense of duty, but out of genuine admiration. Lena was extraordinary, and he was finally starting to realize it. A week later, Damien's house was no longer the same. He realized this as soon as he woke up on a Saturday morning and went down to the kitchen. The smell of fresh coffee and toast greeted him, along with the low sound of Lena humming as she prepared breakfast. She had started taking care of the house naturally, without anyone asking or suggesting. It wasn't just about tidying her own belongings or keeping their space clean. It was more than that. It was as if she had taken over the place as her real home, with all the responsibilities and care that entailed. "Good morning," Damien said, stopping at the kitchen door. "Good morning," Lena replied, smiling over her shoulder. "Coffee's almost ready. I made pancakes too." He looked around, impressed. The kitchen was completely different. Not just clean, but organized in a way that made practical sense. The utensils were in logical places, not just stored in random drawers as before. There was a small vase with white and yellow daisies on the central counter, simple flowers she must have picked from the garden the previous morning. "You didn't have to do all this," Damien said, but he couldn't hide how much he liked the change. "I like to cook, and you all need to eat properly," she replied, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. The refrigerator now had magnetic lists stuck to the door, one with ingredients that were running out, another with the baby's feeding times. The table was set with care, not just with plates thrown down, but with folded napkins and a small jar of homemade jam she had made with fruit from the yard. Ivy ran into the kitchen, still in her pink pajamas, her hair messy, carrying a colorful sheet of paper. "Dummy," she shouted, using the nickname she had invented for him for the first time. "Look what I drew." Damien felt something warm and comfortable in his chest upon hearing the nickname. No one had ever called him that before. It was simple, affectionate, intimate, as if he were really part of the family. "Let me see," he said, crouching down to her level and giving the drawing his full attention. It was a representation of the house, but not as it really was. In Ivy's drawing, the house had bright, cheerful colors, colorful flowers in the windows, and cozy smoke coming out of the chimney. It looked welcoming, alive, happy. "It's beautiful," Damien said, genuinely impressed. "Is that how you see our house?" "That's how it is now," Ivy replied, with the absolute sincerity of children. In the following days, Damien began to notice subtle little changes throughout the house. Lena organized the rooms without making a fuss or asking for permission. She folded the towels in a different, more efficient way in the bathroom. She arranged the sofa cushions so they looked inviting. She placed small vases of fresh flowers in strategic spots all over the house. The living room, which used to be just a beautiful but cold and impersonal space, now showed clear signs of life. The books on the shelf were organized by color, creating a pleasant visual pattern. There was a colorful, soft blanket folded over the arm of the main sofa. Ivy's drawings were carefully spread across the coffee table, adding color, personality, and joy to the room. "The house feels different," Damien commented one evening, as they all had dinner together at the large dining room table. "Different how?" Lena asked, looking slightly worried. "More alive. Like someone finally lives here for real, not just sleeps here." Lena blushed slightly, nervously fidgeting with the food on her plate. "I hope you don't mind. I can't sit still and do nothing." "I don't mind at all. On the contrary, I really like all the changes." It was true. For the first time since he had bought that huge and expensive house, it really felt like a true home. Not just an elegant place to sleep and store belongings, but a place where people actually lived, laughed together, and created special memories. The air in the house was different too. Before, there was a heavy, empty silence that seemed to suck the energy out. Now there were constant sounds of life. Ivy humming as she drew intently, the baby making his small, adorable noises, Lena moving about the house with purpose and energy. Even the furniture seemed different. The sofa was no longer just an expensive object, but a place where Ivy snuggled to draw. The kitchen table was no longer just a surface, but where they shared meals and conversations. The whole house was breathing. On a sunny Sunday afternoon, Damien was in his office trying to focus on some contracts when he heard Ivy laughing loudly and cheerfully in the living room. He went out to see what was happening and found her sitting on the floor, playing excitedly with Ethan. The baby was lying on a colorful blanket, and Ivy was making funny faces at him. "Look, Dammy," Ivy said when she saw him appear. "Ethan is really smiling." Damien got closer and saw that it was true. The baby, who until then had only had serious expressions or cried when something bothered him, was smiling. A small but genuine smile that lit up his little face. "It's the first time he's done that," said Lena, who was watching from a nearby armchair with an expression of pure joy. "He's never smiled like that before." "He likes me," Ivy said, obviously proud of her achievement. Damien knelt down beside them, curious. Ethan looked directly at him and, to his complete surprise, smiled again. It was a smile directed specifically at him, as if the baby clearly recognized him and approved of his presence there. "I think he really likes you too," Ivy said, satisfied. Damien felt a strange and powerful emotion. It was the first time in his life a baby had smiled at him. It was the first time he felt genuinely included in a family, even if he wasn't officially part of it. That week, Ivy started spending much more time with him voluntarily, not just showing him drawings quickly, but asking curious questions, telling elaborate stories, simply being around because she wanted his company. She would drag all her drawing materials to wherever he was working. "Why do you work so much?" she asked one afternoon, while drawing intently on the office floor. "Because I need to earn money to pay the bills," Damien replied, pausing his typing. "But you already have a lot of money. Mommy said so." "That's true, I do, but work keeps me busy during the day." "Busy with what exactly?" Damien stopped typing completely and looked at her. It was a seemingly simple question, but one he had never honestly asked himself. "I'm not sure," he admitted, surprised by his own answer. "You seem happier now than you did before," Ivy said, focused on carefully coloring a drawing. "Do I?" "A lot. Before, you always had a sad and tired face." "Not anymore." Damien thought about it seriously. Was it true? Was he really happier? He couldn't say for sure, but there was something fundamentally different in his life, a lightness he hadn't felt in many years. On Friday of that week, Ivy appeared in the office with a clearly special drawing. It was more careful and detailed than all the others, with vibrant colors and small details she rarely included in her work. "This one is especially for you," she said, handing him the paper with solemnity. It was a drawing of the two of them together, side by side, both smiling. This time there were words written in the uneven but neat handwriting of a 5-year-old. "Thank you, my new friend." Damien looked at the drawing for a long time, feeling something move deep inside his chest. The words hit him in a way he hadn't expected and wasn't prepared for. He felt his eyes well up with unexpected tears. "Ivy," he began, but his voice failed completely. "You don't like it?" she asked, immediately concerned by his reaction. "I love it. I really, really love it. It's the most beautiful and special gift I've ever received in my entire life. Really, really. And you know what's important. You are the bravest person I know." Ivy tilted her head to the side, clearly curious. "You saved your mom and your little brother that cold night. A little kid, alone, scared one, but you didn't give up. You weren't afraid to ask a stranger for help. That's true courage. Mommy always told me that brave people protect the ones they love, no matter what. Your mom is absolutely right, and you proved it that night." Ivy smiled, her whole face lighting up with the sincere praise. From that day on, their friendship solidified in a way Damien had never experienced in his life. Ivy sought him out for absolutely everything, to show him a new drawing, to tell him about something interesting she had seen in the garden, to ask for help reading a difficult word in a book. She started drawing near him all the time, as if his presence were necessary for her creativity to flow. She would carefully arrange her pencils and papers on the office floor while he worked on the computer. Sometimes they would sit in comfortable silence, each focused on their specific activity. Other times she would talk non-stop, telling completely made-up stories about her drawings. "This is the castle of the princess who loves dragons," she explained one afternoon, showing an extremely colorful drawing. "She's not afraid of them at all because she knows they're good on the inside." "How did she find that out?" Damien would ask, genuinely interested in the story. "Because she talked to them instead of running away," Damien smiled. There was a childish wisdom in these stories that touched him more deeply than any adult philosophy. During the weekends, Ivy would follow him around the house like a friendly shadow. When he checked emails on his tablet, she would draw silently beside him. When he read the newspaper on the sofa, she would read her storybooks aloud, inventing completely new plots for the pictures on the pages. "Do you have a girlfriend?" she asked on a sunny Sunday as they drew together in the living room. "No, I don't," Damien answered. "Why not?" "I've never found the right person. Mommy doesn't have a boyfriend either. She told me she doesn't need one. Your mum is a very strong and independent woman." "Do you like my mum?" Ivy asked, with the completely natural curiosity of children. Damien hesitated. It was a surprisingly complicated question to answer for a 5-year-old. "Yes, I do. She's a very good and special person. I think she likes you a lot too. She smiles more when you're home." That innocent observation stayed in Damien's mind for the rest of the day. Was it true? Did Lena really smile more when he was around? He started to pay attention to it. One night, after Ivy had gone to sleep and the house fell silent, Damien stayed in the living room carefully organizing her drawings. There were so many now that he needed a much larger folder. Each one told a unique little story, showed a special piece of her imagination. Lena came down to get a glass of water from the kitchen and found him there, handling the drawings with extreme care. "She really likes you a lot," she said, watching him put the papers away as if they were treasures. "I like her a lot too. She's a very special and smart girl. You're naturally good with children. You have a special way with them." "I never thought I was. I've never been around kids before you all arrived. Ivy has never had a present and positive father figure. It's really good to see her connect with someone like that. Damien looked at Lena. There was something subtle in her voice, an almost imperceptible sadness. Her father hasn't been in our lives for a long time, and it's definitely better that way. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Thank you, Lena said finally. For what? For being so kind and patient with her. For paying real attention to her drawings. For listening to her stories with interest. Not everyone has the genuine patience for that. It's not patience. I genuinely enjoy being with her. She's smart, creative, funny, affectionate. Yes, she is, very much so. Sometimes I forget she's just a little kid. She's been through so much. But look at her now. Happy, safe, creating beautiful art. You've done an absolutely incredible job raising her. Lena smiled, and Damien realized that Ivy was right. Her smile really did seem more frequent and genuine lately. The next morning, Damien woke up to the sound of loud laughter coming from the kitchen. He went down, curious, and found Ivy patiently teaching Ethan how to draw, holding his tiny hand with a crayon on the paper. "Look, Dammy," she said, very excited. Ethan made his first drawing. It was just a few completely random scribbles, but Ivy treated them as if they were a museum-worthy masterpiece. "Shay, it's absolutely beautiful," Damien said, joining in on the fun completely. Ethan is a natural artist, just like his sister. The baby looked directly at him and smiled again. That special smile that Damien was now absolutely sure was reserved especially for him. In that perfect moment, watching Ivy affectionately playing with her brother, hearing Lena humming softly in the kitchen, smelling the comforting aroma of fresh coffee and fresh flowers, Damien realized something fundamental and transformative. For the first time in his life, he truly knew what a real home was. It wasn't just a beautiful place to live. It was a place where people genuinely cared for one another, where small gestures of affection happened naturally every day, where each day brought new discoveries and moments of simple but profound joy. The house was breathing, and he was finally learning to breathe along with it. 2 weeks later, on a rainy Thursday evening, Lena was in the kitchen washing the dinner dishes when Damien arrived from work. Ivy was in the living room drawing, and Ethan was sleeping peacefully in the makeshift crib in the bedroom. "How was your day?" she asked, as she always did when he arrived. "Long," Damien replied, loosening his tie. "And yours?" "Good." Ivy drew all afternoon, and Ethan slept a lot. There was something different in her tone of voice, a hesitation that Damien couldn't quite identify. She continued washing the dishes, but her movements were slower, more thoughtful. "Lena," he said, approaching the sink. "Is everything okay?" She stopped washing and turned to him, drying her hands on a dish towel. "Damien, I need to talk to you about something." His heart skipped a beat. There was something in her expression that immediately worried him. "Of course, what is it about?" "It's about before you helped us, about how we ended up in that situation." Damien pulled out a chair and sat at the table, motioning for her to do the same. "You don't have to tell me if you don't want to. I need to. You deserve to know." Lena sat down, her hands clasped on the table. She took a deep breath before she began. "I worked as a cleaner. I started right after Ivy was born. I didn't have many options. I didn't finish high school, and I needed something that would give me flexibility with my hours because of her." Damien listened in silence, sensing the effort it was taking for her to tell him this. "It was a good job. They paid well, treated the employees well. I was able to support us, pay the rent, buy food. It wasn't easy, but we were okay." "What happened?" "The company went through a merger a few months ago. They laid off a lot of employees, especially in the cleaning department. They said they were going to outsource the service, that it would be cheaper." Her voice was getting lower, as if telling the story was physically painful. "They fired me on a Friday. No warning, no explanation other than the merger. They paid what they owed me, and that was it. I had a few months of unemployment benefits, but it wasn't much. And when it ran out, that's when you lost the apartment. Yeah, the landlord wouldn't wait. I found some odd jobs, but it wasn't enough. Until I couldn't pay for anything anymore. Damien felt a tightness in his chest. He imagined Lena struggling alone, trying to maintain her dignity while everything crumbled around her. "Where did you work?" he asked, although a part of him already suspected the answer. Lena looked him directly in the eyes. "Leclerc Urban Group." The silence that followed was deafening. Damien felt as if the air had been sucked out of his lungs. It was his company. She had lost her job because of a decision he had approved. "Damien," Lena said, noticing the change in his expression. "Are you okay?" He couldn't speak. The merger. He remembered it clearly now. They had bought a smaller company and consolidated operations to cut costs. He had signed the papers that approved the mass layoffs in the cleaning department. Lena had lost her job because of a decision he had made. She and Ivy had been left without a home, without security, sleeping in a car in the cold, all because of a line in a contract he had signed without a second thought. "It was your company," Lena said, not as a question but as a statement. She had realized from his reaction, "It was," he managed to say, finally. "Oh." They were silent for a long moment. Damien could hear the sound of the rain on the window, Ivy humming softly in the living room, life going on as normal while he processed the magnitude of that revelation. "I didn't know," he said finally. "About you specifically. There were so many names on the list. I know. It wasn't personal. But it should have been." Lena sighed, looking at her own hands. "Well, now you know the whole story. Why we were in that situation, why I was so desperate." "Lena, we'll be on our way now," she said, getting up from her chair. "We've imposed enough. You helped us when we needed it, and I'm grateful for that. But now it's time for us to leave." "No." "What do you mean, no?" "You're not going anywhere. Not like this." Lena stared at him, confused. "Damien, you don't need to feel guilty. You didn't know. But I know now. And I can't let you leave like this." He stood up too, his mind working quickly. "Stay until you're truly stable, until you have a real chance to start over. I can't accept charity. It's not charity. It's responsibility. And besides, I have a proposal." Lena frowned. "What kind of proposal?" "A job. At the company. A real position, with a decent salary, benefits, or stability." "Damien, not as a cleaner. I know you're much more capable than that. I've seen how you organize this house, how you manage everything. There's a position in administration that would be perfect for you." Lena shook her head. "I'm not qualified for that. I didn't even finish high school. You have something better than a qualification on paper. You have real competence, organization, responsibility, dedication, and if you need any courses, the company will pay for them. Why would you do this for me? Because it's the right thing to do. And because you deserve a chance." Lena looked at him for a long moment, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "I don't know. Think of it this way. You wouldn't be doing me a favor. I'd be making a good deal. Employees like you are rare. Employees like me, who genuinely care, who do things because they need to be done, not because someone is watching, who transform every place they go." From the bedroom, the sound of Ethan crying softly came. Lena looked in the direction of the sound. "Torn, go get him," Damien said. "We can continue talking." Lena returned a few minutes later with Ethan in her arms. The baby had woken up to feed and was restless. She sat down again, placing him in a comfortable position, and began to breastfeed him discreetly. "Are you serious about this?" she asked. "The job?" "Completely serious. A starting salary of $2,500, health insurance, food allowance, flexible hours so you can take care of the children." $2,500, she repeated, incredulous. "That's what the position pays. It has nothing to do with you specifically. It's the market rate." Lena looked at Ethan, who was nursing peacefully, then looked at the living room where Ivy was still drawing. "What would I do exactly?" "General office administration, organizing schedules, coordinating meetings, managing documents. Things you already do here at home, but applied to a corporate environment. And you think I could do it?" "I'm absolutely sure." Ethan finished feeding and settled into his mother's lap. Sleepy. Lena rocked him gently, thinking, how long would the contract be for? Indefinite. A permanent job with a formal contract. And if it doesn't work out, it will. But if for some reason it doesn't, you'll leave with all your employment rights, nothing to lose. Lena was silent for a while, just rocking Ethan. Damien could see the internal conflict reflected in her face. Pride versus need, distrust versus hope. It would be strange, she said finally, working for you after all this. You wouldn't be working for me directly. You'd be an employee of the company, with your own boss, your own department. I would rarely appear in your day-to-day. And the kids, Ethan is still so little. The company has a daycare, and you can bring Ivy for the first few months until you find a spot in a good school. You've thought of everything. I have. Because I want this to work. Lena looked at him with an expression Damien couldn't quite decipher. There was gratitude there, but also something more. Why are you doing this? And don't tell me it's just guilt or responsibility. Damien hesitated. The truth was too complicated to explain at that moment, because you changed my life. This house, which was just a place to sleep, became a home. Ivy taught me things about joy I didn't even know existed, and you showed me what a real family is like. Damien, I don't want you to leave. Not yet. I want you to stay until I'm sure you're okay, stable, secure. Lena looked at Ethan, who was now sleeping soundly in her arms. His little face relaxed, his fists clenched, completely trusting in his mother's arms. Okay, she said finally, her voice low. I accept. Are you sure? I am, but with a few conditions, which are, first, if at any point you think I'm just taking up space out of pity, you fire me on the spot. That will never happen. Second, I'll pay rent while I'm living here. Not much, but something. Lena, it's non-negotiable. I need to maintain my dignity. All right. How much do you think is fair? $300 a month. It's what I could afford for a room somewhere. Accepted. And third, if this becomes weird or complicated, I'll leave. No drama, no problem. I'll just go. Understood. Lena smiled then. It was the first time Damien had seen real hope in her eyes since they had met. And when would I start? Monday, if you want. I'll give you some time to get organized. Monday is good. Ethan stirred in her lap, opening his eyes for a moment before going back to sleep. Lena looked at him with infinite tenderness. Thank you, she said, looking at Damien, for everything, for the second chance. Thank you. For letting me be a part of this. Outside, the rain continued to fall, but inside the house there was a sense of new beginnings, of paths opening up, of hope taking shape. Ivy appeared at the kitchen door, sleepy, carrying a new drawing. What are you talking about? She asked. About the future, Lena replied, smiling at her daughter. Is it a beautiful future? I think so, my love, I think so. Ivy smiled and ran to show her drawing. It was a female figure in a uniform behind a large desk, with two small children playing nearby. It's Mommy at her new job, she explained. Damien and Lena looked at each other, surprised. How did you know Mommy was going to have a new job? Lena asked. I draw what's going to happen, Ivy said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world, and it's going to be good. The drawing is all colorful and happy. And it was, full of bright colors and wide smiles. Maybe Ivy was right. Maybe the future really would be colorful and happy. The following Monday, Lena started working at the Leclerc Urban Group. Damien drove her on the first day, driving in silence while she held Ethan in her lap and watched the city through the window. Nervous? He asked, as they stopped at a traffic light near the company building. A little, she admitted. It's been a while since I've worked in an office. It'll be fine. Sarah, the supervisor, is great. She'll guide you through everything. The company building was imposing, all glass and steel, reflecting the morning sky. Lena adjusted Ethan in her lap and took a deep breath. Ready? Damien asked. Ready. He walked her to the 10th floor, where the administrative department was located. Sarah Morrison, a woman in her early 40s with graying hair and a welcoming smile, was waiting. You must be Lena, she said, extending her hand. It's a pleasure to meet you." "The pleasure is mine," Lena replied, shaking her hand. "And this little prince must be Ethan." The baby was awake and curious, looking at everything around him with his dark eyes wide open. "I'll leave you to get acquainted," Damien said. "Lena, if you need anything, just call." "Thank you," she said, and he could tell she was really nervous. In the first few days, Lena faced the challenge of balancing her new routine with caring for Ethan. The company's daycare was well structured, but she was still breastfeeding, so she needed to take regular breaks. Sarah was understanding and helped her organize her schedule. "How was it today?" Damien would ask every night when he got home. "Good, hard, but good," Lena would reply, usually with Ethan in her arms or preparing something for Ivy. Gradually, she adapted. She learned to use the company's systems, understood the dynamics of the departments, and began to feel useful again. There was dignity in having a job, in contributing, in not depending on anyone's generosity. Ivy, for her part, was loving the new routine. She also spent her days at the company's daycare, in a special area for older children, where she could draw and play with other kids. At night, she would come home full of stories to tell. "I met a girl today who draws just like me," she said one night during dinner, "and she taught me how to make paper flowers." "That's great," said Damien. "So you made new friends?" "I did, but you're still my best friend," Ivy added, making Damien smile. After 2 weeks, Lena was fully adapted to the job. Sarah constantly praised her organization and efficiency. "She's a godsend," she commented to Damien in a quick chat in the hallway. "She organized the entire filing system that's been a mess for months, and she has an incredible ability to solve problems." "I'm glad it's working out," Damien said, and it really was. At the end of the first month, Lena received her first paycheck. Damien was in his home office when she arrived from work, more excited than usual. "It all worked out," she said, showing him the pay stub. "The amount is correct. The deductions too." "Of course they are. I told you I was serious." "Now I can plan properly, pay my share here, save a little, and in 2 months I can start thinking about a place of our own." The sentence hit Damien in an unexpected way, a place of their own. Of course, it was natural for them to want independence, but the idea of them leaving the house left a strange emptiness in his chest. "You don't have to rush," he said. "Yes, I do. We've imposed enough, and now that I can afford it, it's time for us to move on with our lives." In the following weeks, Lena started looking for apartments. In her spare time, she searched online ads and visited places on weekends. Ivy sometimes accompanied her. Other times she stayed home with Damien. "Mommy is looking for our new house," Ivy told him one afternoon while drawing in the living room. "And are you excited?" Sort of. I'm going to miss it here." "And you." "I'm going to miss you guys too." "Then why do we have to leave?" It was a simple question, but one Damien couldn't answer properly. "Because your mum wants to have your own house. It's important to her." "But this house is big. We could stay here forever." "Things don't work like that, Ivy." "Why not?" Again, Damien didn't have a good answer. "Why not, indeed?" After 6 weeks of work and 2 weeks of searching, Lena finally found an apartment. It was small, just 2 bedrooms, but it was in good condition and in a safe area. "It's perfect," she said, when she returned from the visit. "It has a nice living room. The kitchen is small but functional, and the bedrooms get a lot of natural light." "When can you move in?" Damien asked, trying to sound casual. The landlord said, "I can move in at the end of this week. I'll pay a security deposit and the first month's rent." "Does it have furniture?" "Some basics." "I'll need to buy a few things, but nothing too expensive." Damien nodded, but he felt a growing tightness in his chest. On Wednesday, Lena came home from work with a different expression. There was a mix of joy and sadness on her face. "I got it," she announced. "I closed on the apartment. We're moving on Saturday." Ivy stopped drawing and looked at her mother, then at Damien. "For real?" she asked. "For real, my love, our new home." "But I like this house," Ivy said, her voice small. "I like it too, but now we're going to have our own little place." Damien watched the scene in silence. He knew it was the right thing. that Lena needed this independence, but he couldn't be happy about the news. The next few days passed in a blur. Lena bought the basics for the new apartment, some bedding, kitchen utensils, cleaning supplies. Ivy helped her make lists and plans. "Will my room have a desk for drawing?" she asked. "It will. A small one, but it will. And can I paint the walls? We can talk to the landlord about that." On Friday night, the eve of the move, they had a special dinner. Lena cooked everyone's favorite dish, meat lasagna. The table was set carefully, with fresh flowers in the center. "It's kind of a farewell and kind of a celebration," she said, serving the portions. "To our friendship," said Ivy, raising her juice glass as if for a toast. "To new beginnings," Lena added. "To family," Damien said, surprising himself. They clinked their glasses in an informal but emotionally charged toast. After dinner, Ivy insisted on showing Damien all the drawings she had made in the last few weeks. There were many, spread out on the living room floor. "This one is our new house," she said, pointing to a colorful drawing. "It's going to be small, but cozy. And this is you visiting us," she showed another. "Because you promised you would visit." "I did promise," Damien confirmed. "And this is all of us together at the park," she continued. "Because even if we live in different houses, we're still family." The word family echoed in the room. Lena looked away, clearly emotional. "Time for bed, Ivy," she said, her voice a bit hoarse. "Can I stay up a little longer?" "Tomorrow is going to be a long day, let's go." Ivy got up and ran to hug Damien. "Good night, dummy." "Thank you for everything. Good night, little artist." After Lena put Ivy to bed, she returned to the living room. Damien was putting the drawings away in a folder. "You don't have to keep all of them," she said. "I want to. They're important to me." "Damien, thank you for everything. For the house, the job, the chance to start over. You don't have to thank me. You changed my life too." "How so?" He stopped organizing the drawings and looked at her. "This house was just a place to sleep. You turned it into a home. Ivy taught me to see joy in simple things. You showed me what a real family is like. Damien, I'm going to miss you all so much. We'll miss you too. But it's not goodbye forever. We're friends now. We are." On Saturday morning, Damien helped carry the few things they had to the car. It wasn't much: clothes, some of Ivy's toys, baby supplies, the drawings. "Is that everything?" he asked, looking at the two small suitcases. "It's everything we need," Lena replied. Ivy was quiet, holding her doll Luna and looking at the house one last time. "I'm going to miss my room," she said. "Whenever you want to visit, just let me know," said Damien. The new apartment was 20 minutes from Damien's house. It was indeed small, but it had a lot of natural light and was clean. Ivy ran to see her room while Lena showed him the place. "It's perfect," she said. "Small, but perfect for us." Damien helped carry the things in and assemble Ethan's crib. The baby was calm, babbling and observing the new place with curiosity. "I think that's it," Lena said after everything was in its place. They stood in the small living room, an awkward moment of transition. "Well," Damien said finally, "I'll let you get settled." "Damien, wait." He stopped and turned around. Lena approached and hugged him. It was a hug of gratitude, affection, and farewell. "Thank you," she murmured. "For everything. Thank you." Ivy ran out of her room and threw herself into Damien's arms. "We'll come back to visit you," she said, squeezing him tight. "Promise you'll let us?" "I promise you're always welcome." Ethan, in his mother's arms, started to babble as if he wanted to join the farewell too. "I think he's saying bye-bye," Ivy said, laughing. "I think so." Damien kissed Ivy's forehead and waved at Ethan. He looked at Lena one more time. "If you need anything, we'll call, I promise. Take care. You too." The drive home was strange. Damien drove on autopilot, thinking about the empty house that awaited him. When he arrived, he parked in the garage and sat in the car for a few minutes before going inside. The house was exactly as it had always been before they arrived: clean, organized, quiet. But now the silence was different. It was empty. He walked through the rooms, noticing the absence. Ivy's room was tidy, The bed made, but lifeless. The room where Lena slept had the makeshift crib disassembled, stored in the closet. In the kitchen, there were no flowers on the table. In the living room, there were no drawings scattered about. There was no sound of a child playing, a baby babbling, or Lena humming. For the first time since he had bought that house, Damien felt the empty space for real. Not just physically, but emotionally. He sat on the living room sofa and looked around. The house was back to what it had always been, a beautiful, expensive, and completely soulless place. He had returned to the life he had before, but now he knew the difference between a house and a home, and for the first time in his life, he understood what it meant to miss someone. 3 weeks after the move, Lena was adapting well to the new routine. The small apartment had become a cozy home. On a Thursday afternoon, after work, she went to the supermarket to do some shopping. Ethan slept peacefully in the baby carrier while she walked through the aisles picking items from her list. It was in the cleaning products section that she saw him. Marcus was standing at the end of the aisle, just watching her. He didn't do anything, didn't say anything, just stared at her with that expression she knew all too well. Calculating, predatory. Lena's heart pounded. Her hands started to tremble, and she gripped the handle of the shopping cart tightly. How long had it been since she'd seen him? 6 months? More. He looked different. Thinner, with a scruffy beard, his clothes wrinkled, but his eyes were exactly the same. Cold, empty, dangerous. Marcus took a slow step towards her. "Lena," he said, his voice low and controlled. She didn't answer. She turned the cart sharply and started walking quickly to the other side of the aisle. "Lena, wait," he said, but without changing his tone. She didn't stop. She pushed the cart faster, her heart racing. She needed to get out of there. She needed to get to the car. She needed to get Ethan away. Marcus didn't follow her physically, but she could feel his eyes glued to her back. That's exactly how he used to do it. He would just watch Guy, and she knew he was in control. She abandoned her shopping, took only what was in her basket, and went straight to the checkout. Her hands were shaking so much she could barely get her wallet. The cashier noticed her agitation. "Are you all right, Mum?" she asked, concerned. "I'm fine," Lena lied, her voice coming out louder than she intended, "just in a hurry." She paid quickly and practically ran to the parking lot. She put Ethan in the car seat with hurried movements, constantly checking to see if Marcus had appeared. She only breathed a sigh of relief when she was inside the car with all the doors locked. All the way home, she constantly checked the rearview mirror. No car was following her. No sign of Marcus, but the fear wouldn't go away. When she got to her building, she carried Ethan in a rush. She ran up the stairs and locked the apartment door as soon as she was inside. Ethan woke up from the sudden movement and started to cry. Lena picked him up, still trembling. "It's okay, my love," she whispered. "Mommy's here." But it wasn't okay. Marcus had found her. After months of thinking she was finally safe, he had shown up. Ivy arrived from school an hour later, excited and full of stories from her day. Lena tried to act normally, to prepare a snack, but her hands were still shaking. "Mommy, are you okay?" Ivy asked, watching her mother's face. "I am, sweetie, just a little tired from work. Do you want me to draw something to make you feel better?" "That would be nice. Draw a happy family." Ivy smiled and ran to get her colored pencils. Lena prepared dinner on autopilot and her mind racing. What did Marcus want after all this time? How had he found out where she was, and what would he do now? After putting both children to bed, she sat in the small living room, looking out the window. Every noise on the street made her jump. At 10 o'clock at night, she couldn't take the tension anymore. She picked up her phone with trembling hands and dialed Damien's number. "Lena?" he answered on the second ring. "Did something happen?" "Damien, I'm sorry to call so late," she said, her voice breaking. "It's no problem. Are you okay? Your voice sounds strange." Her voice failed completely. "I saw Marcus today, the girl's father." Tense silence on the other end of the line. "Where did you see him?" "At the supermarket. He was there, watching me like he always used to. He hardly said anything, just stared at me. But I know that look, Damien." "Are you at home now?" "I am. With the girls. They're sleeping. Damien, I'm so scared. Did he make any direct threats? He doesn't need to make direct threats. I know what his presence means. Lena felt the tears start to fall. And I don't want to run away again. I'm tired of running, of hiding. Help me protect my daughters, Damien. You're not going to run, and you won't have to. You're not alone this time. Damien, tomorrow morning, first thing, we're going to the police station. You're going to file a police report and request an emergency protective order. Do you think it will work? It will be an important start. You are not alone this time. Do you understand? Lena felt an immense relief spreading through her chest. Thank you, she whispered. I'll be there tomorrow at 8 in the morning. Everything will be okay. The next morning, Damien arrived promptly at 8. Lena was ready, with Ivy already at school and Ethan in her arms. How did you sleep? Better after we talked. Thank you for coming. I'll always come when you need me. At the police station, Lena told the whole story to the officer in charge. The troubled relationship with Marcus, the veiled but constant threats, the history of controlling behavior. Did he ever physically assault you? The officer asked. Not directly, but there was constant psychological intimidation. And yesterday, the way he looked at me, I know he's planning something. Based on what you've reported, I can issue an emergency protective order. He will be legally prohibited from approaching you and the children. And if he disobeys it, then it will be a case of immediate arrest. Lena left the police station feeling significantly safer. Damien accompanied her back to work. How are you feeling now? Better. Much better. More protected. Thank you for coming with me. That's what real friends do. For the next 2 weeks, there were no more signs of Marcus. Lena gradually returned to her normal routine. The protective order gave her a real sense of security. Damien kept in constant contact, calling every day to see how they were. It was comforting to know that someone genuinely cared. 2 weeks after the incident, Damien decided to visit the apartment on a sunny Sunday. He wanted to see how they were adapting, but he also missed their company. When he rang the doorbell, he heard an excited rush inside. "It's Dammy!" Ivy shouted. "It's Dammy!" The door opened and she literally threw herself into his arms. "Uncle Dammy," she said, using a new, affectionate term that warmed his heart. "You really came to visit us." "I did. I missed you all so much." Lena appeared at the door, smiling genuinely with Ethan in her arms. The baby had grown noticeably in the last few weeks. "It's so good to see you," she said. "Come in, please. Welcome to our home." The apartment was completely transformed. Even though it was small and had simple furniture, Lena had managed to make it cozy and full of life. There were green plants in the windows, Ivy's colorful drawings taped to the walls, and colorful cushions on the sofa. "It looks beautiful in here," Damien said, looking around in admiration. "Thank you, we did what we could." Ethan, who was now almost 6 months old, recognized Damien immediately and reached his little arms out to him, babbling happily. "He wants to go to you," Lena said, handing him the baby. To everyone's surprise and joy, Ethan had learned to crawl in the past few weeks. As soon as Damien put him on the floor, he quickly crawled to his feet and stayed there, trying to climb up his pants. "Look how much he's grown," Damien said, impressed. "He's become a clever little baby. He's grown so much. And Ivy has become a professional artist." "It's true," said Ivy, excited. "Want to see my new drawings, Uncle Dammy?" She brought a folder full of recent works. They were more elaborate than before, with details, vibrant colors, and complex stories. "This one is you visiting us today." She showed a drawing of a male figure in a suit at a colorful door. "And this is our whole family together at the park." Damien looked at the drawings with affectionate attention. There was pure joy in them, bright colors, huge smiles. Even living in a small space, they had built a life full of light. "You are really happy here," he observed. "We are," Lena confirmed, smiling. "It's ours. Small, simple, but completely ours." They spent the whole afternoon together. They played on the floor with Ethan, watched Ivy draw new masterpieces, and talked about work and school. It was as if they had never been apart. During a simple dinner, at a small table that barely fit the 4 of them, Damien looked around and smiled deeply. The house was simple, The furniture basic, but it was filled with life and true love. "What are you thinking about?" Lena asked. "About how incredible you are. How you managed to build all this on your own." "We had a lot of important help," she said, looking directly at him. "No, you did this with your own strength. I just offered a kickstart." "That's not true, Damien. You saved us that cold night." Damien shook his head slowly. "I thought so too, but now I realize it wasn't quite like that." "What do you mean?" "I didn't save you. You saved me too." Lena looked at him, confused. "Before you came into my life, I had an expensive house, but I didn't have a real home. I had a lot of money, but I had no real purpose. Ivy taught me to see joy in simple things. You showed me what a real family is. Ethan taught me that love doesn't need words." He looked at the three people who had completely changed his life. "You taught me the difference between being alive and truly living." Ivy, who was listening intently, smiled with her childish wisdom. "So we're all each other's saviors," she said. "Exactly," Damien agreed. That night, as he said goodbye with long hugs, Damien knew he had found something he never imagined he needed. A chosen family, built not by blood, but by love and mutual care. In the end, no one had saved anyone alone. They had saved each other. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next ones. Leave a like, because it helps this story get recommended to more people. See you in the next story.